Level 1. The W-2 employee. The notification pings on your phone at exactly midnight. It is a freezing, rain-slicked Friday morning. Your heart does a rhythmic, Pavlovian skip as you see the direct deposit notification from your massive corporate employer. You have worked 60 grueling, mind-numbing hours this week. You have skipped lunches, sat through deeply toxic, utterly pointless board meetings, navigated suffocating office politics, and sacrificed your physical sleep for the absolute, singular promise of this specific mathematical number. You eagerly open your mobile banking application with a desperate sense of accomplishment, hoping to finally see a balance that offers you some breathing room. But the fleeting feeling of victory is instantly, violently replaced by a cold, hollow, deeply sickening pit in the bottom of your stomach. The number is wrong. It is always, infuriatingly wrong. You pull up your digital pay stub on your monitor to look closely at the financial wreckage. Your gross pay was actually incredibly impressive. You technically earned $5,000 this bi-weekly pay period through your own exhausting physical and mental labor. But you realize with horrifying clarity that the person who actually got paid today was not you. It was the massive, unfeeling bureaucracy of the Internal Revenue Service. Before you ever saw a single, solitary cent, before the money even had a chance to physically touch your checking account, the federal government reached directly into the transaction and violently carved out its massive pound of flesh. You read the itemized deductions like a list of casualties: federal income tax, punishing state tax, local municipality taxes, social security deductions, Medicare withholdings. You look down at the final net pay line at the bottom of the screen and realize, with absolute crushing despair, that you are missing nearly 35% of your life's energy. This is the brutal, unforgiving, mathematically rigid reality of being a standard W-2 employee. You are the absolute foundational tax base of the entire nation. You have zero leverage, zero structural power, and zero control. You are heavily taxed on your gross income before you are ever legally allowed to pay for your skyrocketing rent, your basic groceries, or your fundamental survival. You are effectively working from Monday morning until Wednesday afternoon every single week just to pay for a government that treats you as nothing more than a highly predictable, entirely automated, non-consenting revenue stream. Furthermore, because your personal finances are so fundamentally basic and straightforward, you are a sitting duck for the IRS's massive, automated algorithms. There are no complex offshore corporate structures to hide behind, no shell companies to audit, and no highly paid, aggressive tax attorneys to fight on your behalf. The math on your W-2 is simple, and because it is simple, the IRS can effortlessly audit you using a basic computer program that costs them almost nothing to operate. You are the absolute easiest target in the entire financial forest. You are the one who pays the absolute maximum legal penalty for the supposed crime of being a reliable, hard-working, rule-following employee. You feel the relentless, crushing grind. You feel the suffocating financial pressure. And the terrifying reality is that the more overtime you work, the more you sacrifice, the more they aggressively take, and there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop them within the confines of this level. Level 2. The side hustler. The fundamental, paradigm-shifting psychological shift happens the exact moment you decide you have finally had enough of the invisible, suffocating Dewey cage. Driven by financial desperation and a burning desire for autonomy, you start a late-night side business. You register an LLC. You become an independent, self-employed contractor. You are now officially a 1099 filer. And for the very first time in your entire life, you are actively peering behind the heavy, velvet curtain of the United States tax code. You experience a profound, shocking awakening. You realize that the IRS does not just have one uniform set of rules for everyone. It has two entirely different, deeply contrasting systems. One system is designed explicitly to punish the employees who merely consume wealth, and the other is explicitly designed to handsomely reward the business owners who create it. Suddenly, the entire physical world looks completely different to you. You aren't just blindly buying consumer goods anymore. You are strategically acquiring vital business assets and incurring necessary operational expenses. You finally learn and understand the fundamental wealth-building difference between post-tax and pre-tax spending. As a desperate W-2 employee, you bought your expensive smartphone with the pathetic crumbs left over after the government ruthlessly took its cut. Now, that $1,000 cell phone is a vital, necessary communication tool for your emerging enterprise. It is a 100% legal, unquestionable tax deduction. That expensive, high-speed internet connection in your home office, a deduction. Every single mile you drive your personal car to meet a potential client, pick up office supplies, or survey a job site. That is money the IRS can no longer legally touch. Let us look closely at the raw, undeniable real math. You hustle relentlessly and earn an extra $10,000 this calendar year through your new side business. As a traditional employee, you would brutally lose $3,000 or $4,000 of that directly to taxes. But as a savvy, awakened contractor, you realize you strategically spent $5,000 on a new high-powered laptop, aggressive digital marketing materials, and necessary business travel. You legally, effortlessly deduct that entire $5,000 directly from your gross business income. Suddenly, you aren't being aggressively taxed on $10,000 anymore. You are only being taxed on the remaining $5,000. By aggressively lowering your adjusted gross taxable income, You might even drop entirely into a lower overall tax bracket, saving you thousands of additional dollars across your entire cumulative earnings. This is your very first, intoxicating glimpse of true financial sovereignty. You are no longer just a passive, bleeding victim of the system. You are actively learning to speak its complex, mathematical language. You aren't just working desperately for a heavily taxed paycheck. You are actively optimizing for a net operating income. The psychological awakening is absolute. You realize with staggering clarity that the incredibly complex tax code isn't just a list of harsh government punishments. It is a detailed, highly specific, legal instruction manual written by the wealthy, for the wealthy. Level 3. The high income earner. You have successfully, aggressively climbed the treacherous corporate ladder. You have played the political game, you have done everything right, and you are now a senior executive, a specialized surgeon, or a high-powered attorney, making a staggering $250,000 a year in W-2 salary. By every societal metric, you should feel like an absolute king. You drive the heavy luxury car, you possess the highly prestigious job title, and you sit in the corner office with the sweeping city views. But as you sit at your massive mahogany desk late in the evening, carefully reviewing your year-end tax projections with your accountant, you realize you have blindly walked straight into a highly polished, incredibly expensive trap. You are wearing heavy, suffocating golden handcuffs, and the IRS is holding the only set of keys. You discover the darkest secret of the working class. The more you earn in a salary, the more the tax system absolutely hates you. Because all of your massive, impressive income is still inextricably tied to your physical, to labor rather than passive, appreciating assets you own, you have violently slammed into the impenetrable brick wall of the top-tier marginal tax brackets. On every single new dollar you earn above a certain threshold, the federal government is aggressively taking nearly 40 cents. When you factor in aggressive state income taxes, local taxes, and the total lack of standard deductions phasing out at your income level, you are effectively, mathematically splitting your hard-earned, stressful annual bonuses 50/50ths with the state. You are doing all of the agonizing work, bearing all of the immense corporate stress, but you are only legally allowed to keep half the reward. The underlying math is utterly devastating to your morale. If you sacrifice your weekends, ignore your family, and work 100 extra, grueling hours to earn a massive $20,000 performance bonus, you will only see $10,000 actually hit your bank account. You are working yourself to the absolute physical and mental bone, completely destroying your health and your personal relationships, just to become the highest performing, most reliable fuel for the government's massive, inefficient engine. You are incredibly rich in top-line income, but you are absolutely poor in financial structure. You have no real estate depreciation to shield your earnings. You have no long-term capital gains to artificially lower your effective rate. You are simply a massive, high-yield cash crop for the IRS to ruthlessly harvest every single April. This is the painful, inescapable realization that a high salary alone cannot, and will never, build true, generational wealth. If your underlying tax structure is wrong, you aren't building a permanent financial empire. You are just building a very fragile, incredibly expensive lifestyle that will instantly collapse the moment you stop working. Level 4. The asset owner. You reach your breaking point. You finally realize that highly taxed W income is a massive structural liability, so you aggressively, permanently pivot your entire financial strategy. You stop obsessively focusing on the top-line size of your corporate paycheck and start obsessively, ruthlessly focusing on the structural size of your personal balance sheet. You take your heavily taxed savings and you buy your very first multifamily commercial rental property. You are now officially an asset owner, and the IRS suddenly, miraculously stops treating you like a target and starts treating you exactly like a highly valued business partner. The federal government desperately wants you to provide housing and infrastructure to the growing population, and they are fully willing to pay you in massive, highly lucrative tax breaks to do it. This is exactly where you discover the most powerful, wealth-generating, legally sanctioned mechanic in the entire federal tax code, the depreciation shield. On paper, the business model is highly lucrative. You collect a steady $2,000 a month in rent from your vetted tenant. That is $24,000 a year in raw, positive cash flow. In the bleak, highly taxed W-2 world you just escaped, that would be another $24,000 added to your gross income for the government to brutally tax at 40%. But the IRS allows you to magically, legally deduct the theoretical wear and tear of the physical building against that rental income. You take the total purchase value of the physical building, excluding the land, and divide it by exactly 27.5 years. Suddenly, out of thin air, you have generated a massive paper loss of $10,000 a year. The math is nothing short of a financial miracle. You have physically put $24,000 of actual, highly liquid, immediately spendable cash into your bank account over the year. But when you sit down to file your complex tax returns, you legally accurately tell the IRS that after accounting for property taxes, maintenance expenses, and the massive phantom deduction of structural depreciation, your real estate business only made $5,000. The IRS treats your highly profitable, physically appreciating, cash-flowing rental property as if it is a dying, decaying asset that is actively losing value. You are quietly, legally pocketing thousands of dollars a month completely and entirely tax-free, while your high-income, budget-2 executive friends are weeping as they lose half their annual bonuses to the taxman. You are aggressively growing your net worth in the shadows, perfectly shielded by a physical structure of brick, wood, and concrete. You aren't just a passive investor anymore. You are a vital economic housing provider, and the impenetrable depreciation shield is your massive, government-mandated reward. Level 5. The corporate entity. Your wealth accelerates, and you make the ultimate structural leap. You completely stop operating as an individual human being in the eyes of the financial system. You realize that John Smith is a fragile, heavily taxed, legally exposed entity, but Smith Holdings, LLC, is a powerful, legally insulated, wealth-building machine. You move your entire financial life, your properties, your consulting income, and your investments deep inside a layered corporate entity, a holding LLC or an S corporation. You are now officially classified as a job creator in the eyes of the federal government, and the fundamental rules of engagement change entirely in your favor. You now live your daily life by the fundamental golden rule that permanently separates the elite class from the struggling middle class. Individuals earn money, pay their taxes first, and then desperately try to survive on what little is left over. Corporations, however, earn money, aggressively spend whatever they deem necessary to operate, grow, and expand their lifestyle, and then, and only then, they pay a much lower corporate tax rate on the tiny, calculated crumbs that are left over at the absolute bottom of the ledger. The transition is absolute. Your luxury car is no longer a heavily taxed personal consumer expense paid for with post-tax dollars. It is a heavy corporate lease utilized for necessary business travel and client acquisition. Your lavish, cross-country trips to luxury resorts are no longer classified as personal vacations. They are legally documented corporate board meetings, strategic planning retreats, and vital market research expeditions. Your expensive steakhouse dinners are no longer personal indulgences. They are legally deductible business development and networking events. You are systematically, aggressively shifting your massive personal cost of living entirely into the business expense column. By the time you finally pay yourself a modest, highly calculated, completely reasonable salary from your corporation, specifically engineered to avoid the crushing blow of massive self-employment taxes, your actual taxable income is a tiny, microscopic fraction of what it used to be. The IRS no longer treats you as a cash cow to be milked. They treat you as a vital economic engine that must be protected. They want you to spend capital. They want you to invest heavily. They want you to lease expensive equipment and hire independent contractors. Every single dollar you strategically reinvest into your business structure is a dollar the IRS legally cannot touch. You are fully living the legendary write-off lifestyle, where your complex business entities pay for your aggressive growth and personal comfort, while the federal government waits patiently, hat in hand, for the carefully manicured leftovers. You have successfully, permanently detached your vulnerable personal identity from your massive financial liability. You are no longer just a person. You are an untouchable, highly optimized corporate brand, and the brand is thriving. Level 6. The buy, borrow, die strategist. You have completely transcended the traditional economy and reached the absolute financial stratosphere. Your verified, liquid net worth is now comfortably in the tens of millions of dollars. However, your vast wealth isn't sitting lazily in a commercial bank account, slowly losing value to inflation. It is entirely tied up in a massive, aggressively compounding, highly diversified blue-chip stock portfolio and a sprawling international commercial real estate empire. You decide you want to buy a massive $10 million oceanfront mansion and a private jet to travel the globe, but you are infinitely too smart and too highly educated to simply sell your stock. Selling millions of dollars of your highly appreciated assets would instantly trigger a catastrophic, massive long-term capital gains tax event, voluntarily handing millions of dollars directly to the IRS in a single, foolish transaction. Instead, you execute the ultimate, closely guarded billionaire loophole. The IRS absolutely does not, and legally cannot, tax debt. You completely bypass retail banks and go directly to the ultra-exclusive private wealth management division of a major global institution. You don't ask for a traditional mortgage based on your corporate salary. You ask for a massive, flexible line of credit based entirely on the raw value of your physical assets. You use your pristine, $50 million stock portfolio as flawless collateral. The private bank eagerly issues you a $10 million pledged asset line of credit at a microscopic, heavily negotiated 2% institutional interest rate. You use that newly minted, borrowed money to buy your beachfront mansion, your exotic cars, and your lavish, untouchable lifestyle entirely in cash. To the watchful eyes of the IRS, you haven't technically earned a single solitary cent of taxable income. You are, technically and legally speaking, heavily in debt. On paper, to the untrained eye, you look like you are broke and highly leveraged. You file a complex, multi-page tax return, legally reporting an adjusted gross income of $0, or even claiming a massive carry-forward paper loss from your real estate depreciation. You are actively living the opulent, unrestrained life of a billionaire, while legally, mathematically qualifying for the exact same low tax bracket as a struggling college student. Your massive underlying assets remain fully invested, continuing to aggressively grow at an average of 8 to 10% a year, while your strategic debt only costs you a microscopic 2%. You are perfectly, flawlessly arbitraging the global financial system. You are spending tens of millions of dollars while legally paying absolutely zero in federal income taxes. You will strategically carry this low-interest debt until the day you eventually die, at which point your vast estate will simply pay off the loans, your assets will receive a miraculous legal step-up in basis, and your heirs will inherit the entire sprawling empire without ever paying a single cent of the massive capital gains taxes you successfully avoided for decades. This is the absolute, untouchable peak of financial magic. Level 7. The family office. You are no longer just a highly successful person or a wealthy business owner. You are the founding patriarch or matriarch of an immortal financial dynasty. You have reached the final, ultimate echelon of wealth preservation, and your primary, existential enemy is no longer the standard income tax or the capital gains tax. It is the devastating, draconian 40% federal estate tax, commonly known as the death tax, that aggressively threatens to violently dismantle and consume half of your massive empire when you inevitably pass it down to your children. You absolutely refuse to let the IRS break up your bloodline's hard-earned power. You hire the most elite, ruthless, and brilliant tax strategists, legal scholars, and estate planners on the planet to build the final, impenetrable fortress, the single-family office. You completely remove your name from the wealth. You legally, systematically move your billions of dollars into a massive, private, family-controlled charitable foundation, alongside a complex, overlapping series of irrevocable, generation-skipping trusts. You literally, legally donate your massive assets to your own private charity. To the general public and the adoring media, it looks like a grand, selfless, historical act of incredible philanthropy. To the IRS, the money has been completely removed from your taxable estate and is now 100% tax-exempt in perpetuity. But here is the dark, brilliant, ultimate secret of the global elite. Your family still permanently sits on the governing board of directors of that tax-exempt foundation. Your children and grandchildren are named as the highly compensated executives of the charity. They still legally control and utilize the massive private jets owned by the foundation for charitable outreach. They still live rent-free in the sprawling, historic estates officially owned by the interlocking trusts. They still completely wield the massive, market-moving voting power of the billions of shares of corporate stock permanently held within the philanthropic shield. The wealth is technically given away, but the absolute control remains strictly within the bloodline. You have permanently, irreversibly insulated your bloodline from the reach of the Internal Revenue Service. You have reached a state of absolute, godlike financial sovereignty. You have successfully converted your fragile, mortal wealth into an immortal, tax-exempt, legal entity that will continue to aggressively grow, compound, and exert massive geopolitical influence for the next several hundred years. You have utterly defeated the taxman once and for all. You have ascended from a struggling, heavily taxed W-2 employee to a grand architect of your own reality, where the federal government is no longer a terrifying predator to be feared, but an entirely irrelevant, powerless spectator to your family's eternal reign. The brutal grind of your youth is over. The crushing financial pressure is completely gone. This is the ultimate, hidden reality of the global elite.